Years of provocation, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched like a metal canyon beneath the artificial stars of Nexus Prime. Thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose in perfect circles toward the domed ceiling. Their voices created a low hum that echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked down the central path toward the speaking platform. Her black diplomatic uniform stood out against the colorful robes and exotic forms of the alien representatives. She carried a single datapad in her hand. On it were the names of 12,000 dead humans. The Hegemony Coalition sat in the prime seats near the front. The Vorthak delegates were easy to spot with their scaled green skin and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. Next to them sat the tall, gray-skinned ethereals with their oversized heads. The insect-like hive representatives clicked their mandibles in what might have been conversation. Sarah reached the platform and activated the speaking system. Her voice carried clearly through the vast space. "Honored council members," she began, "I stand before you today to demand justice for the massacre of innocent human civilians." A ripple of movement went through the crowd. Some aliens leaned forward with interest. Others seemed bored, as if they had heard this complaint many times before. 3 days ago, the civilian transport ship New Horizon was destroyed by hegemony forces while traveling to the colony world of Haven's Rest. 12,000 men, women, and children died in that attack. 12,000 people who were guilty of nothing more than seeking new homes among the stars. Sarah touched her datapad and holographic images appeared above the platform. The twisted wreckage of the New Horizon floated in space like broken bones. Bodies drifted among the debris, frozen and still. The Vorthak commander claimed our ship carried illegal weapons. Our salvage teams have recovered the cargo holds. They contained farming equipment, medical supplies, and personal belongings. Nothing more. Commander Vektar of the Vorthak Navy rose from his seat. His scaled face showed no emotion as he spoke. The human ship refused to submit to proper inspection. It fled when ordered to stop. Our forces acted within established law. Established by whom? Sarah's voice grew harder. By the same beings who tax our merchants at rates 10 times higher than any other species. By those who inspect our colony ships for months while alien vessels pass freely. By those who have blockaded 17 of our trade routes in the past 5 years. The chamber filled with angry hisses and clicks from the hegemony section. Council Speaker Zixthala, a being that looked like walking crystal, struck the sound gong to restore order. Ambassador Chen, the speaker's voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Humanity remains one of the newer species in the galactic community. Your rapid expansion across dozens of star systems has caused concern among the established civilizations. Certain restrictions are necessary for galactic stability. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She had heard these words before in dozens of previous hearings. Always the same excuse, always the same dismissal. Speaker Zixthala, humanity has been part of this council for 30 years. We have followed every law, respected every treaty, and sought peaceful solutions to every dispute. In return, we have been treated like criminals and children. She gestured to the images still floating above the platform. How many more ships must be destroyed? How many more of our people must die before we receive the same respect given to every other council member? Commander Vektar spoke again, his voice filled with cold amusement. Perhaps when humanity proves it can contribute more to galactic civilization than rapid breeding and aggressive expansion, such respect will be earned. Laughter rippled through the hegemony section. Sarah felt her hands shake with barely controlled anger. Around the chamber, she could see the faces of alien delegates. Some looked uncomfortable. Many looked indifferent. A few seemed to enjoy the humiliation of the human representative. "We have contributed," Sarah said quietly. "Our medical technology has saved millions of lives across dozens of species. Our agricultural techniques have ended famines on 12 worlds. Our exploration ships have mapped 3 new sectors and discovered 6 habitable planets that now house mixed populations. Tricks and tools." Vektar waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Any species can develop such things given enough time. True galactic leadership requires wisdom that comes only with age and proper understanding of one's place." The message was clear. Humanity would always be seen as the junior partner, the newest species, the ones who needed to be controlled and managed by their betters. Sarah looked around the chamber one final time. She had stood in this same spot dozens of times over the years. She had made the same arguments, presented the same evidence, and asked for the same basic fairness. The result was always the same. I see, she said softly. Then let me be perfectly clear in my final statement to this council. The chamber grew quiet. Something in her tone made even the most arrogant delegates pay attention. For 30 years, humanity has sought peace through patience. We have endured insults, harassment, and now murder, while believing that reason would eventually prevail. We were wrong. Sarah deactivated the holographic display and picked up her datapad. The families of the New Horizon victims deserve justice. Since this council refuses to provide it, humanity will seek it elsewhere. She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, Speaker Zixthala called out, "Ambassador Chen, this council has not dismissed you. There are proper procedures." Sarah stopped and looked back over her shoulder. "Procedures," she repeated. "Yes, we have learned much about your procedures." She continued walking. The massive doors of the council chamber closed behind her with a sound like thunder. In the silence that followed, none of the alien delegates noticed the small communication device on Sarah's collar, blinking 3 times. None of them understood the significance of the coded signal that traveled instantly across the galaxy to reach Earth. Admiral Marcus Webb received the message while standing in the command center of the Human Defense Force headquarters. The tall gray-haired man read the short text and nodded to himself. "Signal received and confirmed," he said to the officers around him. "Operation Thunderstrike is now active. All fleet commanders are to assume combat readiness immediately." The officers began moving with swift precision. Within minutes, encrypted messages flowed to every human military base, every hidden research facility, and every carefully positioned asset throughout known space. In the depths of the asteroid belt beyond Mars, massive shipyards that had worked in secret for 15 years began their final preparations. Weapons that no alien scientist had imagined hummed to life in hidden bunkers. Soldiers who had trained for a war everyone hoped would never come checked their equipment one last time. Admiral Webb looked at the tactical display showing the positions of human and alien forces throughout the galaxy. For 30 years, humanity had appeared weak and divided. They had seemed content with their small corner of space and their minor role in galactic affairs. It was all a lie. 30 years of patience, Webb said quietly. I wonder if they will understand what they have awakened. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council continued its session, as if nothing important had happened. They debated trade regulations and territorial disputes, while their carefully ordered universe prepared to change forever. None of them noticed the human merchant ships that had been docked at Nexus Prime for weeks suddenly departing. None of them saw the unusual activity at human embassies throughout hegemony space. The storm was coming, but they were still admiring the calm weather. In 6 hours, everything would change. The galaxy would learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to wait until the perfect moment to strike. Thunder. Across the void, Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the HSS Indomitable and watched the countdown timer reach 0. Around him, his officers worked with quiet efficiency at their stations. The bridge was darker than most alien vessels preferred, with soft blue lights that helped human eyes focus on the tactical displays. All fleets report ready. Admiral, Commander Lisa Park announced from the communication station. Webb nodded. He had waited 15 years for this moment. 15 years of careful planning, secret construction, and painful patience while watching aliens treat his people like unwanted children. Begin Operation Thunderstrike, he said calmly. Across 47 star systems, the message arrived simultaneously. Human ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind gas giant moons, and in the dark spaces between stars suddenly came to life. Engines that ran on principles alien scientists did not understand began their work. The first target was the Vorthak naval base at Kepler 442. It was a massive fortress built into an asteroid, surrounded by defense platforms and protected by a fleet of 300 warships. Intelligence reports said it would take months to capture such a stronghold. The attack began at exactly 600 Galactic Standard Time. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the lead squadron of human destroyers as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Her ships looked smaller and more fragile than the Vorthak vessels that immediately moved to intercept them. Enemy fleet approaching, her tactical officer reported. 215 vessels. They're demanding we surrender or be destroyed. Elena smiled grimly. Signal the fleet. Execute Pattern Alpha. What happened next broke every rule of space combat the galaxy had ever known. The human ships simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not retreating. They became invisible to every sensor the Vorthak possessed. Quantum stealth technology that humanity had developed in secret made their vessels undetectable. The Vorthak fleet found themselves firing at empty space. While death approached, unseen Elena's destroyers reappeared directly inside the enemy formation. Their weapons were not the energy beams or missile systems that galactic warfare had used for centuries. Instead, they fired small metal rods accelerated to 90% of light speed. The kinetic projectiles passed through Vorthak shields as if they did not exist. Each rod carried the force of a nuclear weapon but left no radiation. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant flashes as the hypervelocity rounds tore through their hulls like paper. First wave eliminated, Elena reported, moving to engage the fortress. The asteroid base activated its defense systems. Massive energy cannons swiveled to target the human ships. Force shields that could stop conventional weapons powered up to maximum strength. Elena's ships began a new maneuver that made the watching Vorthak crews stare in disbelief. The human vessels started phasing, becoming partially solid as they approached the shields. Their quantum tunneling drives allowed them to pass through energy barriers that should have been impossible to cross. Within 30 minutes, human Marines were fighting in the corridors of the supposedly impregnable fortress. Similar scenes played out across known space. At the Grimhold prison world, Captain James Morrison led an assault force that moved like ghosts through solid rock. His Marines wore powered armor that made them nearly invincible, while their weapons could crack. Bunkers open like eggs, the prison guards barely had time to sound alarms before human forces were freeing the thousands of prisoners held in the underground cells. Many of the captives were humans who had been taken during inspections over the years. Others were members of species that had opposed hegemony rule. Sector 7 secured, Morrison reported as his team moved through the prison levels. "We've found evidence of torture chambers and illegal medical experiments." The revelation only made the human forces fight harder. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Webb watched reports flow in from across the galaxy. His carefully planned offensive was working even better than projected. "Admiral," Commander Park called out, "we're receiving surrender requests from 12 Vorthak installations. They want to negotiate." Webb considered this. The original plan had been to hit hard and fast, then offer terms. But the enemy response was weaker than expected. "Inform them that unconditional surrender will be accepted. Any installation that continues to resist will be destroyed completely." He turned to the tactical display showing the bigger picture. 3 major hegemony fleet bases had already fallen. 2 more were under attack. The enemy's reserve forces were scattered across dozens of systems, trying to respond to attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The ethereal Dominion tried a different approach. Their psychic warriors were famous throughout the galaxy for their ability to break enemy minds from thousands of kilometers away. They focused their mental powers on the human fleet commanders. The psychic attack hit Admiral Chen Okafor as her task force engaged a hegemony patrol group near Alpha Centauri. For a moment, alien thoughts tried to invade her mind, seeking to drive her insane with visions of terror and despair. Instead, the attack bounced harmlessly off neural implants that every human officer carried. The advanced computer systems in their brains not only blocked the psychic assault, but traced it back to its source. "Psychic attack detected and countered," Chen Okafor's tactical officer reported. "We have a lock on the ethereal command ship." "Return to sender," the admiral ordered. The human ships launched a different kind of weapon. Psychic feedback generators hit the ethereal vessel with its own mental attack, multiplied 100-fold. Across the alien ship, crew members collapsed as their own psychic powers turned against them. The hive clusters deployed their famous swarm tactics. 1 billion small fighter craft launched from hidden bases throughout their territory. Each ship was barely large enough for a single insectoid pilot, but together they could overwhelm any defense through sheer numbers. Captain Sarah Kim watched the enemy swarm approach her position at the Tau Ceti system. Her single heavy cruiser was outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. "Deploy the hunters," she ordered. From her ship's launch bays came not human fighters, but something entirely different. Artificial intelligence-guided missiles the size of fighters, but with computer brains that could think faster than any living pilot. Each Hunter missile could track and engage multiple targets simultaneously. Their guidance systems learned and adapted in real time, becoming more effective with each enemy they destroyed. The billion-ship swarm met the 1,000 Hunter missiles in the space between two planets. What should have been a hopeless battle for the humans became a methodical slaughter. The AI weapons moved through the enemy formation like wolves among sheep, their targeting systems finding weak points and exploiting them with deadly precision. Within 3 hours, the entire hive swarm had been reduced to drifting debris. Back on Nexus Prime, emergency sessions of the Galactic Council convened as panicked reports flooded in from every hegemony system. The carefully maintained balance of galactic power was collapsing in real-time. Speaker Zixthala's crystalline form seemed duller than usual as she read the latest intelligence reports. How is this possible? She asked the assembled military commanders. Our experts assured us that humanity possessed no significant military capability. General Quacksnuth of the Hegemony Strategic Command brought up a holographic display of the current situation. Red markers showed human attacks across dozens of systems. Green markers showed hegemony forces. There were far fewer of them than there had been that morning. They have been hiding their true strength, the general admitted. Their technology is far more advanced than our intelligence indicated. Their tactics are unlike anything in our military databases. But they are still only one species, the speaker protested. We command 7 different civilizations with thousands of years of military experience. Experience with conventional warfare, Quacksnuth corrected. These humans fight using methods we do not understand. Their ships phase through our shields. Their weapons ignore our defenses. Their soldiers move through solid matter. On the display, another hegemony base turned from green to red as human forces captured it. Commander Vectar, who had dismissed humanity so casually just hours before, stared at the tactical screen with growing horror. How long before they can reach our core systems? He asked. General Quacksnuth calculated quickly. At their current rate of advance, 18 hours, the chamber fell silent. In less than a day, humanity had accomplished what military experts had said would take years of brutal warfare. On Earth, in the depths of the Human Defense Force Command Center, Admiral Webb received the latest status reports. Operation Thunderstrike was ahead of schedule on all fronts. Enemy resistance was crumbling faster than his most optimistic projections had suggested, but Webb knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come when the hegemony realized how desperate their situation had become. Cornered enemies often fought with a fury that made them extremely dangerous. Sir, Commander Park approached his station. We're receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council is requesting immediate negotiations. Webb looked at the tactical display one more time. His forces now controlled over 60% of former hegemony territory. The enemy's main fleets were scattered and demoralized. Tell them we'll consider talks, Webb said finally. Impossible mathematics, Doctor. Yuki Tanaka stood in the command center of the human research vessel Archimedes, watching data streams from across the galaxy. As humanity's chief xenobiologist, she had spent years studying alien military capabilities. Now she was seeing those capabilities crumble in real time. Show me the ethereal counterattack, she requested. The main display changed to show the Vega system, where a powerful ethereal fleet was attempting to retake one of their lost colonies. The ethereals had been masters of psychic warfare for over 3,000 years. Their mental attacks could drive enemy crews insane from light years away. Captain Rodriguez's task force was defending the system with just 12 human cruisers against 40 ethereal dreadnoughts. On paper, it should have been a massacre of the human forces. The ethereal ships began their psychic bombardment, focusing their collective mental power on the human fleet. Waves of terror and madness reached across the void, seeking to break the minds of the human crews. Instead, something unprecedented happened. Neural feedback confirmed, Rodriguez's communication officer reported calmly. The enemy psychic attack has been reversed and amplified. Dr. Tanaka nodded with satisfaction. The neural implants that every human military member carried were not just defensive. They could take incoming psychic energy and reflect it back with geometric amplification. On the display, the ethereal command ship suddenly went dark. Across their fleet, similar failures cascaded as their own psychic weapons turned against them. Crew members who had trained their entire lives to project mental force found themselves overwhelmed by their own reflected power. Fascinating, Dr. Tanaka murmured, making notes on her datapad. The ethereals never developed defenses against their own psychic abilities. They assumed no one else could use such weapons. The battle in the Vega system ended within 2 hours. The surviving ethereal ships retreated in disorder, their crews too mentally damaged to fight effectively. Dr. Tanaka switched the display to show another engagement. This one involved the famous hive clusters and their billion-ship swarms. The insectoid species had perfected numerical superiority over millennia. Their standard tactic was to overwhelm enemies with sheer numbers. Admiral Chen Okafor faced such a swarm at the Proxima Centauri system. 2 billion small fighters approached her position, each one guided by a hive-mind intelligence that allowed perfect coordination. The human response was typically unexpected. "Deploy the trackers," Chen Okafor ordered. From her ships came clouds of microscopic robots, each one no larger than a grain of sand. The nanobots spread through space faster than the eye could follow. Within minutes, they had attached themselves to every single enemy fighter. "All targets marked," her tactical officer reported, initiating synchronized strike. What happened next broke the mathematical foundations of space combat. Each human ship fired simultaneously at thousands of targets. Their AI-guided weapon systems tracked individual fighters across impossible distances, calculating intercept courses for moving targets scattered across cubic light-years of space. The billion-ship swarm died in a single moment. Every fighter exploded simultaneously as precision weapons found their marks with perfect accuracy. Dr. Tanaka shook her head in amazement. The hive species developed their tactics based on the assumption that no enemy could engage all their ships at once. Human targeting systems make that assumption obsolete. She moved to another display showing the Carillion defensive positions. The Carillions were master engineers who built fortress worlds that could withstand century-long sieges. Their defensive technology was considered unbreakable by conventional forces. Captain Elena Vasquez was testing that assumption at the Carillion stronghold of Iron Gate. The planet was surrounded by multiple layers of energy, shields, and protected by weapons platforms that could destroy capital ships with single shots. Vasquez's solution was elegantly simple. Her ships did not attack the defenses directly. Instead, they used gravitational manipulation to create artificial black holes at specific points around the planet. The tiny black holes lasted only microseconds before evaporating, but that was enough. The gravitational shear they created tore apart the energy shields and twisted the weapons platforms into metal sculptures. Gravitational warfare, Dr. Tanaka noted. They're using physics itself as a weapon. In the Carillion Command Center, General Jektar watched his supposedly impregnable defenses dissolve like smoke. His engineering staff stared at their instruments in disbelief. "Sir?" his chief scientist reported with a shaking voice. "They're creating localized distortions in space-time. Our shields cannot protect against alterations in the fundamental structure of reality." The general's mandibles clicked in frustration. How is this possible? Such technology should require the resources of an entire civilization. "Apparently," the scientist replied, "it does." Back on the Archimedes, Dr. Tanaka was reviewing the most troubling development of all. Human forces were not just winning through superior technology. They were adapting to new threats faster than should have been possible. She pulled up the engagement records from the Centauri Nebula, where human ships had encountered a previously unknown alien weapon. The device used quantum entanglement to cause enemy vessels to phase out of normal space, effectively removing them from the battle without destroying them. The first human ship hit by this weapon had indeed vanished from normal spacetime. But within 6 minutes, the remaining human vessels had developed a countermeasure. Their quantum field generators created a stabilizing effect that prevented the phase-out weapon from working. 6 minutes, Dr. Tanaka repeated to herself, from first contact with unknown technology to deployment of effective countermeasures in 6 minutes. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Webb on Earth. "Admiral, I need to brief you on what we're seeing out here. The enemy is beginning to understand that they're not just facing superior firepower. They're facing an opponent that learns and evolves faster than they can adapt." Webb's image appeared on her screen. The Admiral looked tired but satisfied with the progress of the war. "Explain." "Doctor, Every time alien forces try a new tactic or deploy a different technology, our field commanders develop responses almost instantly. It's as if our entire military is a single learning organism that shares knowledge at the speed of thought. This was not entirely inaccurate. The neural implants that connected human military personnel to their ship systems also linked them to a quantum communication network that spanned the galaxy. Every lesson learned by one unit was immediately available to all others. The aliens are starting to realize, Dr. Tanaka continued, that they can't surprise us twice with the same trick. In fact, they can't surprise us at all after the first attempt. On the main display, she showed Admiral Webb the current tactical situation. Human forces now controlled roughly half of former hegemony territory. Enemy resistance was not just weakening, it was becoming increasingly desperate. Sir, intelligence reports suggest the hegemony is preparing something significant. Our sources indicate they're concentrating their remaining reserve fleets for a major counterattack. Webb nodded grimly. Let them come. After 2 days of running battles, their forces are scattered and demoralized. Our ships are operating at peak efficiency. The Admiral was not wrong. Human casualty rates remained remarkably low, despite the scope of the offensive. Advanced medical technology meant that even serious injuries could be treated quickly. Ships that might have been lost in conventional warfare were saved by damage control systems that seemed almost magical to alien observers. Meanwhile, hegemony forces were learning that retreat was often as dangerous as standing and fighting. Human pursuit tactics involved quantum tracking systems that could follow enemies through hyperspace. Ships that tried to run found human forces waiting for them when they arrived at their destinations. Dr. Tanaka brought up another display, showing psychological profiles of captured enemy personnel. The prisoners we've taken are showing signs of severe stress, she reported. They're calling our tactics impossible mathematics because our combat effectiveness seems to violate their understanding of military science. She highlighted a particular interview transcript. A captured Vorthak admiral had been questioned about human capabilities. They fight like they can see the future, the alien had said. Every trap we set, they avoid. Every weakness we try to exploit, they have already protected. It is as if they know our plans before we make them. The truth was simpler but perhaps more frightening. Human forces were not predicting enemy actions. They were calculating all possible enemy actions and preparing responses for each one. Quantum computers that could process information faster than biological minds could imagine made such comprehensive planning possible. Admiral Webb studied the tactical projections for the coming days. Doctor, what's your assessment of enemy morale? Dr. Tanaka brought up the latest intelligence reports. Fragmenting rapidly, sir. The hegemony coalition is beginning to blame each other for the defeats. The Vorthak are accusing the ethereals of weakness. The hive clusters claim. When God's bleed Imperator Kazgorath stood in the command chamber of his flagship, the World Eater, watching the tactical displays that showed his civilization crumbling in real time. The massive Vorthak leader had ruled the hegemony coalition for 3 centuries, his scaled hide bearing the scars of 100 victories. Now he faced his first real defeat. Report, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority that had once made entire species bow in submission. General Coxnoth approached with obvious reluctance. My lord, 17 core systems have fallen to human forces. Our reserve fleets are scattered across 40 sectors, trying to contain breakthrough attacks that seem to come from everywhere at once. Kazgorath's yellow eyes narrowed. These humans fight like no species we have ever encountered. Their tactics ignore every principle of warfare developed over millennia. Yes, my lord. Our military academies are worthless against an enemy that phases through shields, reverses psychic attacks, and tracks individual targets among billion ship formations. The Imperator turned to look out at the stars visible through the command chamber's massive viewport. For 300 years he had maintained order in this galaxy through strength and the threat of overwhelming force. The younger species learned their place quickly when faced with hegemony power. Humanity had seemed no different. A rapidly expanding race with basic technology and simple military forces. They should have accepted their junior status and been grateful for the scraps of territory the hegemony allowed them. Instead, they had revealed capabilities that bordered on the impossible. Activate the Stellar Devastator, Kazgorath said quietly. The command chamber fell silent. Every officer present knew what the Devastator could do. The moon-sized weapon represented the ultimate expression of hegemony power. a device capable of triggering supernova explosions in targeted star systems. "My lord," General Quacksnoth said carefully, "the Devastator has never been used in warfare. The collateral damage will serve as an example to the galaxy," Kazgorath interrupted. "If humanity will not accept their proper place, then humanity will cease to exist." He turned to his communication officer. "Set course for the Sol system. Maximum velocity." The massive fleet began moving toward humanity's birth world. At its center, the Stellar Devastator began charging its reality-breaking weapon systems. In the Sol system, Admiral Webb received the intelligence report from his scouts. The approaching enemy fleet numbered over 8,000 vessels, including the mysterious weapon that alien refugees described with terror in their voices. "Analysis of the Devastator?" Webb asked his science officer. Commander Lisa Park brought up holographic displays showing the massive alien construct. It's essentially a weaponized neutron star fragment contained within an artificial shell. When activated, it can destabilize the nuclear processes in nearby stars. Time until it can reach firing range? 18 hours at current approach speed. Webb nodded calmly. The enemy was making their final gamble, betting everything on one decisive strike. It was exactly what human strategic planning had anticipated. "Signal all fleet commanders. Operation Prometheus is now active." Across the solar system, hidden installations that had remained dormant for decades began activating. In the asteroid belt, camouflaged shipyards released vessels that had never appeared on any official registry. On the dark side of the moon, launch tubes opened to reveal weapons that existed in complete secrecy. Captain James Morrison received his activation orders while his ship drifted in the shadow of Jupiter. His mission was simple in concept but nearly impossible in execution: infiltrate the Stellar Devastator and prevent it from firing. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "enemy fleet composition suggests they're expecting a conventional battle. Massive capital ships in standard formation." Morrison smiled grimly. After 4 days of war, alien commanders still had not learned that humans never fought conventionally. Deploy the ghosts. From hidden positions throughout the outer solar system came ships that barely registered on sensors. The Ghost-class infiltrators were humanity's most advanced stealth vessels, capable of remaining undetected even at close range. Morrison's ship, the Prometheus, led a squadron of 12 ghosts toward the approaching enemy fleet. Their mission was to reach the Devastator before it could charge its primary weapon. The hegemony fleet detected nothing as the human ships passed through their formation like invisible phantoms. Meanwhile, the main human fleet prepared to engage the conventional enemy forces. Admiral Chen Okafor commanded the defense of Earth's orbital space, while Admiral Webb coordinated the overall battle from his command ship. "Enemy vanguard entering Mars orbit," Chen Okafor reported. "They're deploying an attack formation." "Let them close to engagement range," Webb ordered. "Make them think we're preparing for a standard fleet action." The hegemony ships spread across space in formations that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. Massive dreadnoughts moved to the center with smaller vessels, providing support and screening. What they found, waiting for them, defied their understanding of military engineering. Human defensive platforms had been built throughout the solar system during the 30 years of peaceful development. What alien observers had assumed were mining stations and communication relays revealed their true nature as the enemy approached. "Defensive grid online," Chen Okafor announced. "All platforms report ready." The space between Mars and Earth suddenly filled with weapons fire of impossible precision. Every shot found its target despite distances that should have made accurate targeting impossible. Hegemony ships that had survived. Dozens of battles died before they could return fire. But the real surprise came when the enemy tried to use their numerical advantage. "Enemy fleet attempting to flank our position," Chen Okafor's tactical officer reported. "They're spreading across a front of several million kilometers. Activate the maze." Around Earth, space itself began to twist. Gravitational manipulation technology created localized distortions that bent the paths of approaching ships. Enemy vessels found themselves traveling in circles, unable to reach their targets despite clear sensor readings. In the depths of the hegemony fleet, Imperator Kazgorath watched his carefully planned attack dissolve into chaos. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Our ships are following direct courses to their targets. but they keep ending up in the wrong locations. His science advisor, an elderly ethereal named Zixkotha, studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. My lord, they appear to be manipulating space-time itself. Our ships are traveling in straight lines through curved space. The tactical implications were staggering. If humans could bend space around their positions, then traditional concepts of range and targeting became meaningless. While the main battle raged, Captain Morrison and his Ghost Squadron reached the Stellar Devastator. The massive weapon was protected by its own fleet of Guardian vessels and surrounded by energy shields that could stop any known weapon. Morrison's solution was, typically human, he ignored the defenses. Entirely, quantum tunnel approach, he ordered. Materialize inside the target. The ghost ships phased through the shields and hull armor as if they were not there. Within minutes, human marines were fighting in the corridors of the galaxy's most feared weapon. The interior of the Devastator was a maze of alien technology and massive energy conduits. Morrison led his assault team toward the weapon's core, where the contained neutron star fragment waited to be unleashed. They found Imperator Kazgorath himself, waiting in the central chamber. The massive Vorthak had abandoned his flagship to personally oversee the weapon's activation. His scaled hide gleamed under the harsh lighting as he turned to face the human intruders. So, he said in perfect English, the junior species comes to challenge the master. Morrison removed his helmet, revealing a face marked by years of military service. The junior species comes to stop a genocide. Kazgorath laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You think you can prevent the inevitable? This weapon will destroy your star and everything within 3 light years. Your entire species will be erased from existence. Maybe, Morrison agreed. But first you'll have to go through me. The Imperator drew a weapon that crackled with energy. Morrison activated his powered armor and drew a blade that hummed with contained force. They fought in the heart of the ultimate weapon while the battle for humanity's survival raged in the space around them. Morrison was enhanced with the best technology humanity could provide, but Kazgorath had 3 centuries of combat experience and the physical advantages of his species. The Vorthak's claws could tear through armor while his scaled hide turned aside blade strikes. The fight moved through the chamber as both combatants sought advantage. Morrison's human agility and tactical training matched against alien strength and experience. Finally, Morrison found his opening. As Kazgorath raised his weapon for a killing strike, the human captain triggered a shaped charge that had been built into his armor from the beginning. The explosion tore through both of them, but Morrison had positioned himself to shield the weapon's control systems from the worst damage. With his dying breath, Kazgorath reached for the firing controls. You cannot stop. Morrison's hand closed over the alien's wrist. Human and Vorthak's strength strained against each other as life faded from both. In the end, it was not strength that decided the contest, the new order. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as Ambassador Sarah Chen walked once again to the central platform. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Gone was the casual dismissal, the barely hidden contempt, and the arrogant laughter that had greeted her previous appearances. Now alien delegates watched her with the careful attention usually reserved for dangerous predators. Sarah activated the speaking system, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. 6 days ago, I stood in the same spot and asked for justice. I was told that humanity needed to learn its place in the galactic order. She paused, looking around at the assembled faces. We have learned our place. Now you will learn yours. Speaker Zixthala's crystalline form seemed smaller somehow, as if the events of the past week had physically diminished her presence. Ambassador Chen, the speaker's voice had lost its previous commanding tone. The council is prepared to hear humanity's terms. Sarah touched her datapad, and holographic displays filled the air above the platform. The images showed the current state of hegemony space, or what was left of it. 17 major star systems under human control, 23 million prisoners of war in our custody, the complete destruction of the hegemony's offensive naval capability. The images shifted to show captured alien installations. We have also discovered extensive evidence of war crimes, including illegal medical experiments on captured civilians and the systematic execution of political prisoners. A ripple of discomfort went through the assembled delegates. Many had suspected such activities, but none had dared to challenge hegemony power directly. Humanity's terms are simple, Sarah continued. First, complete dissolution of the hegemony coalition and all related military agreements. Second, full reparations for 30 years of systematic harassment, illegal seizures, and the murder of innocent civilians. Third, permanent restructuring of galactic governance to prevent any single group from achieving such dominance again. Commander Vectar, who had survived the destruction of his fleet, rose from his seat with obvious difficulty. His scaled face bore the marks of recent injury. Ambassador, you speak of restructuring galactic governance. What does humanity propose to replace the current system? Sarah smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. A system based on merit rather than age, on capability rather than tradition, on justice rather than the convenience of the powerful. She gestured to the displays, which now showed detailed plans for a new galactic structure. The current council gives permanent seats to the oldest species, regardless of their actual contributions to galactic civilization. This will change. Representation will be based on population, economic contribution, technological advancement, and adherence to basic standards of civilized behavior. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Under such a system, humanity would not be the junior partner pleading for recognition. They would be one of the dominant voices in galactic affairs. This is impossible, declared Representative Quaxminal of the Carillion Engineering Guild. The established order has maintained peace for over a millennium. Peace? Sarah's voice grew cold. You call the systematic oppression of younger species peace? You call the blockade of trade routes and the murder of civilians peace? She gestured to images of the destroyed colony ship New Horizon. 30 years of peace that allowed established species to exploit and abuse anyone who couldn't defend themselves. Admiral Webb's image appeared on a secondary display, speaking from the bridge of his flagship. The old order failed because it was built on the assumption that might makes right. The strong did what they pleased while the weak suffered in silence. Humanity has proven that assumption false. General Zekthar of the hegemony ground forces managed to stand despite his injuries. Even if we accept these terms, how can you guarantee that humanity will not simply become the new oppressor? Power corrupts all species eventually. It was a fair question, and Sarah had been expecting it. Because unlike the previous rulers, we understand that true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. The galaxy is vast enough for everyone to prosper if resources are allocated fairly. She brought up new displays showing human territorial claims, or rather, the lack of excessive claims. Humanity will retain control of systems we have liberated until their populations can choose their own governments. We will establish trade agreements that benefit all parties equally. Most importantly, we will share our advanced technology with any species that commits to peaceful development. This last statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. The hoarding of advanced technology by dominant species had been a cornerstone of galactic politics for millennia. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's voice joined the transmission from her research vessel. We have developed medical techniques that can extend lifespans for most known species, agricultural technology that can end hunger on resource-poor worlds, energy systems that eliminate the need for territorial expansion to secure resources. She paused. These advances belong to all intelligent life, not just to those with the military power to seize them. The offer was staggering in its implications. Species that had been locked into subsistence-level existence for centuries could achieve prosperity within decades. The rigid hierarchy that had kept younger civilizations in permanent servitude could be eliminated entirely. But there was a condition. Any species that chooses aggression over cooperation, Admiral Webb's voice carried absolute certainty, will discover that humanity's patience has very definite limits. To emphasize the point, the displays showed the current disposition of human military forces. Fleets that had seemed to appear from nowhere during the war were revealed to have been in position for years. Defensive installations that alien intelligence had never detected were marked throughout known space. The message was clear: humanity had been watching and preparing for far longer than anyone had realized. Representative Thysera of the Ethereal Dominion spoke in a voice weak with exhaustion. What happens to those of us who participated in the previous system? Sarah's expression softened slightly. Species that accept the new order and make genuine efforts to reform will be welcomed as full partners. Those that cling to old prejudices and practices will find themselves increasingly isolated. She looked directly at the Vorthak delegation. War crimes will be prosecuted, but entire species will not be punished for the actions of their leaders. The negotiations that followed took 18 hours. When they ended, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The hegemony coalition was formally dissolved. Reparations were agreed upon that would transfer vast resources to previously oppressed species. Most importantly, the new galactic government included mechanisms to prevent any single group from achieving the kind of dominance that had led to war. Humanity received permanent seats on the Security Council alongside carefully chosen representatives from other major civilizations, but the new structure also included rotating seats for smaller species and strict term limits to prevent the entrenchment of power. 6 months later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperation Station, watching construction crews from dozens of species work together on expansion projects. The station represented everything the new order promised: cooperation instead of domination, mutual benefit instead of exploitation. Admiral Webb joined her at the viewport. "Any regrets?" he asked. Sarah considered the question carefully. "About the war? No, about the necessity of it? Yes." Through the transparent aluminum, they could see human cargo ships moving freely through space lanes that had been blockaded just months before. Mixed crews of humans and aliens worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. "The younger species are adapting quickly," Webb observed. "Colony applications are up by 300%. Trade volumes have increased dramatically. The Corellians are even sharing some of their engineering techniques voluntarily." Sarah nodded. "Fear is a powerful motivator, but it's not a sustainable foundation for civilization. Respect and mutual benefit work better in the long run. And if someone tests that assumption?" Sarah's reflection in the viewport showed the same steely determination that had carried her through 6 days of galactic war. "Then they'll learn what the hegemony learned. Humanity's patience is vast but not infinite. We prefer peace, but we're very good at war." In the distance, a new type of vessel approached the station. It was a joint construction project between humans and 3 former hegemony species, incorporating the best technologies each civilization could offer. The ship would explore regions beyond current galactic borders, carrying crews from multiple species on a mission of discovery rather than conquest. The galaxy was expanding, not through military force but through cooperation and shared purpose. Worlds that had been locked in poverty for centuries now had access to technologies that could transform their civilizations. Species that had been enemies for millennia worked together on projects that benefited everyone. It was not a perfect P,